This is part 2 of the Varsity bathroom renovation. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already seen it. Starting with painting the ceiling. Putting this in here because I'm terrible at file management and wanted to show how you can be a little bit less careful with your corner cutting if you're conscious of your build order. Walls are getting painted later. Santa wanted to help with tiling, so you'll see him getting in the way of the camera a bunch. I had to redo this first row because the laser wasn't set correctly. After adjusting it and checking the plumbness of the wall at the top, I had to move the tiles. This is the first piece of tile trim to go in. Nothing too special about it, just cut it to length and make sure it has thin set in all the little holes. One thing I didn't mention in part 1 is that I like using tape to hold tiles in place. When they're in especially difficult places, I'll even use stretchy plastic masking tape to put a little pressure on them. Door installation. Not going to get super in depth on this, but here's the gist. Take the slab off. Check the top and the floor for level. If they're not, you'll need to put shims under one side of the jambs. Fasten the hinge side first. Use shims as needed, but I like to try to get it directly on the framing if at all possible. I'll tack in one end, either top or bottom depending on how it's behaving, and then go to the other end. You want things to be plumb, but the walls sometimes don't allow for perfect plumbness unless you're willing to start cutting some additional shims between the trim and the jambs. After it's pinned in with the nails, I take out one of the screws from each hinge and replace it with a longer one, making sure it gets into the framing. After the hinge side is secure, go inside and rehang the door. Use the gap between the door and the jambs to place your shims. Do what you can to check for plumb and flush to the walls. The main point from here on is first, get the gap, called the reveal, even all the way around if you can. And second, try to make sure the door slab contacts the door stop evenly as well. If it doesn't, you might end up with some rattle. Time to paint the walls after the tile is done, but before the vanity goes in. So pull the toilet and set it aside in the tub or shower. I made sure to put something between the toilet and the tub to protect the tub from getting scratched. So we are cutting this by hand. We're going to take our time and try to be careful. I'm cutting this by hand at the ceiling, but I did tape the tile trim. White cut to white usually won't be a problem, but white cut to silver trim certainly can be. If a painter you're hiring doesn't tape, look for a different painter. That said, a lot of YouTubers like to show off how fast they can go by not taping. If you're doing this for one of your own rooms, why does speed in taping matter? You're not billing by the job, so take whatever time it takes to get the quality that you're after. At some point, you'll need to caulk all the joints where any pieces of trim, jambs, or baseboards meet. This was the first time I tried to follow the caulk gun with a sponge, and it was kind of hit and miss. Somewhere along the way, I finished the tiling and grouted it. I've already mentioned that I'm bad at file management, so don't at me. When I do threaded fittings, I like to use both tape and dope. I don't have the gear to do the kind of testing I'd like to see if either or both are truly needed, so in the meantime, I do both. Tape seals really well, and dope helps lubricate so you can thread it in farther. After threading it in, I measured what the instructions said for my tub spout and marked it with a Sharpie. A minute with the grinder on the deck gets it cut to length. Then I got into a little trouble. I don't know if I measured poorly or cut poorly or if the instructions weren't great, but I had to do several readjustments to the pipe and the tub spout to get them to fit properly and not leak. Just shy of 4. There we go. Oh, I don't know if I want to try to get another turn out of that. I don't want to crack the tile. It's like right there. Oh, we can't fit paper. All right. Nope. That is fully on. We have to go back. Where's that drip coming from? We're going to loosen the pipe a little bit. No, it was, leaking here. We'll turn this back a little. And we'll give it another go. I really don't want to bust the tile. That is more pressure than I like to put on that. No more drips out of here now. When I need to remove toilets, I use a plunger to get more of the water out than just a simple flush. I don't have a dedicated wet vac for this, so plungers are about as good as I'll get. This was going to be the last install of the toilet. I needed a new wax ring on it and to get all the old caulk off the bottom. Someone had even tried to fix a drain leak by putting caulk in instead of replacing the wax ring. This is how I learned that acetone works great for removing excess silicone on porcelain. Silicone, not silicon. There's a difference. I've mostly given up on rotary tools after this for toilet bolt cutting. Now I just use an angle grinder. So much faster. This also taught me two other things. First, make sure all your washers, clips, etc. are on before you cut the bolt. And second, leave a little extra bolt to grab onto so when you're putting the nut on, you can keep the bolt from turning. Time to install the vanity. So, let's trim the baseboard off a bit. Right, because that corner does a swoop down like that. Let's see how dramatic that is with our straight edge. Like if we just take the bottom 2 inches out from that bottom piece, I think that'll solve most of my problem here. If I can push that door out that way, I don't have to put a side panel in. And it sure looks like we can. Then we definitely have room on this side. I put a reasonable effort into getting the vanity level. I didn't make my best effort because there were no other cabinets it had to line up with. But I still did better than most. There we go. It's a tiny bit off, but we're talking about very, very small amounts. We're a little high here now. Off by about 1 millimeter though, so that's fine. And this is still about the same. So then we get to come and shim out to level front to back. And the reason I didn't check it for square is I can't do anything about this wall. It's gonna get caulked here or side splashed and back splashed. So there's really nothing doing about it. That's looking actually pretty good. Now that the cabinet is fully secure, I can finalize the position of the doors. And you can see what I mean about it's not square. So we're gonna have overlap on this side, which is okay. It's gonna be slightly off center here, which is not ideal, but you have to be kind of a fuss to see it. Not bad, not good. I can accept that. We are not doing the best effort job, or I would have made it out of matching IKEA. People use silicone to build aquariums that hold hundreds of liters of water. I'm pretty sure it'll hold down a vanity top too. I had to grind the center hole out a little bit more because the tap wasn't fitting. Believe it or not, this is something I've done a little bit of. Hey, now it fits. This is only a little bit awkward. I bet it would have been easier if instead of waiting until the countertop was installed, if I had put the faucet on first and then installed them both at the same time. I bet that would have been a little easier. If you were there during the live stream, you'd know that Twitch was suggesting I do exactly that. Sometimes it's fun to troll Twitch chat. Now before we clamp these in, we're gonna make sure they fit and that Amazon didn't send me something really derpy. Now we can at least relieve the pressure so it doesn't spray when I turn it on. It will definitely still drip. Didn't drip as much as I expected. There we go. That worked. I used a new thing I didn't even know existed. A straight 1/2 inch PEX to 3/8 thread adapter. All the 3/8 threads I had ever seen before were attached to valves. So much of plumbing drains end up being done just by eyeballing. Even if you know the math, getting accurate measurements in spaces like this is usually more hassle than it's worth. That said, I've never seen anyone talk about how much more closely ABS pipes fit with the solvent than when you're trying to eyeball to length, and that is definitely a thing. Normally when I'm doing plumbing drains, I have a silver Sharpie around. For those of you in the States using PVC instead of ABS, it would be a black Sharpie. I didn't have silver, and black on black is politics I won't get into here, so I got some blue tape to mark my alignment lines on. All the solvents, ABS and PVC, are pretty messy and drippy, so I always put something down to catch the drips when gluing things together. Next up is a problem that I had due to a manufacturing defect in the sink. I'll leave it in for those of you interested in seeing the troubleshooting process, and for the rest, skip ahead to whatever time it says on the screen. Lazy edit win. It comes with a sponge gasket on top and a silicone gasket on the bottom. So you should not need any extra stuff to get that sealed. I just don't want to crank it so tight that I crack the sink. We still have a little bit in the back here. Let's see if the tail of the sink is cracked. So it does look like we have a bit of damage on the back of this one. So it's not cracked all the way through. I just think it's very thin there. I'm sort of thinking it's like these little chips right along here that are causing me the grief. I've had 2 people say by now that this seal is the only one that should matter, but we have in Canada an overflow here which comes down into the drain here. So there's a second hole here, which is why you need the second seal, because this seal only seals to the top. So there absolutely will be water coming through here. I don't normally like putting silicone on things to stop leaks, but I couldn't come up with any other solutions here. If you have any ideas, leave me a comment telling me how wrong I was. Don't tell me what the idea was, just tell me I'm wrong. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to get somewhere we know for sure the chips are. Let's give her another goer. This will help compress it too, because I'll have a little bit of pseudo lubrication between the nut and the washer here. I couldn't test the fix that day because the silicone had to dry, but a couple of days later I did check and it was fine. Center to center should be 7 9/16. Put 10 right there. 17 and 9 should be about there. All right, that is exactly the right size. Let's drill a tiny pilot hole first. All right, now we get to find out if I can do things manually or if I forever have to use a jig. So I'm thinking kind of about this height. It leaves a little bit of space for if someone's taller than me. We come down by, call it 3 1/4, and then we go up by 3/4. That's down by 2 1/2. So we'll come down by 2 1/2, and we want spacing of 10 inches. So we'll just take this, we'll go, that's 30 1/4, so half of that is 15 1/8. 15 1/8. And then we wanted 5 inches either way. Draw a horizontal first. Put the 10 right on there. There's 15, so that's one. There's 5, so that's the other. All right, so no studs there. You know what? That might do. That seems like it's on there. Needs to be cleaned, but yeah, that's on there. Oh my dog, did that thread the first time? Blind threading first try? Holy cow. Today is a good day. There we go. It's a light. Okay, so about that high. And we can center it on this wall, which is, we'll call that 12.5. I center there, and then center of this thing so it's visually centered. Oh man, this is a dumb measurement. This is 6 7/16, so we want 3 7/32, which will be about a quarter. Just a little bit past a quarter. So we'll go 0, burn 10, 13, and a little bit past a quarter. So that's center of that. Using blue tape like that lets me mark centers all over the place and never worry about erasing it after. There you go. Towel holder. So we're not quite perfect, but we're darn close. That'll do there. There we go. Basically perfect.